Alrighty, welcome sports fans to this edition of Football Talk. It is playoff time. This is Charles E. Smith Jr. I'm here in the Inside Sports Studio. We got a banging show for you today. I do not do this show alone. Of course, it is time for me to introduce my very special co-host, none other than Chris Lardieri of FootballNation.com. Also, you can follow him on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. So without further ado, here for the most important stretch of games, the most meaningful 11 games of the season are about to be coming up here down to Super Bowl Sunday. Chris, what's happening?
How's it going, Charles? I can't believe it's 2013. Happy New Year to you and our faithful followers out there. And this is when it counts. You win or you go home. So I'm looking forward to it. Great cure for the January post-holiday doldrums, right?
Most definitely is. And, it seems like we just started, a few weeks ago or so, and already gone through week 17, ready for the playoffs. And what a fantastic weekend it was. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and give you your props here. I know you took a little bit of time off maybe during the holidays with the FN Follies column there on FootballNation.com, but what do you got coming up this week?
This week, I give you my unconventional NFL wildcard preview. You're going to have the so-called experts at ESPN, NFL Network, Fox, etc., give you breaking down the X's and O's. And in my traditionally humorous and sarcastic way, I will break down what to look for in these games. For instance, I suggest the marquee matchup that everyone's identified, the Seahawks Redskins game, the late game Sunday. I suggest you mute your TV so you don't have to listen to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I say this because I was at a restaurant Sunday watching the end of that great Vikings-Packers game, and I realized how much more enjoyable it was to not have to listen to them and just watch a football game. So those are kind of the things you'll get from my quote-unquote preview. I don't give any picks. I save them for you and the fans here on Football Talk, but kind of give some random observations, a few other nuggets in there that I won't spoil, but footballnation.com.
All right, there we go. Make sure you read it, everybody. And, let's go ahead and get into this week. First, before we talk about Black Monday and get into the picks for the first round of the playoffs and everything, let's go ahead and congratulate a couple of special players. How about Adrian Peterson? Coming within 9 yards of Eric Dickerson's record. And, one of the worst parts about it was that, the sideline reporter, I won't mention any names, but right after the game, she goes down to the sidelines and talks to Adrian Peterson, and right after his team has beaten the mighty Packers and clinched a playoff spot, and asks him, how heartbroken are you that you got within 9 yards of the record and didn't get it? Seriously? Your team just made the playoffs.
Yeah, real classy move there. I won't mention that reporter's name either. But, literally, on a serious note, he just ran out of time and he ran out of yards. I mean, he had that fantastic run down inside the 5-yard line to kick the game-winning field goal. Perhaps said reporter should have gone over to the Vikings kicker and asked if he thought about shanking it to give Peterson a shot for the record. But, yeah, I mean, regardless, a fantastic season. And given the way his season ended last year and how pathetic the Vikings were last year, I think he'll take the playoff berth and the potential MVP any time over the record.
Yeah, definitely. And then, the other big game, which, everyone talked about, we talked about it, and one that did live up to the hype, by the way, and that's involving the Redskins. That's RG3's Redskins playing against the Cowboys. And we had talked about it, Tony Romo. He'll give you a chance to beat him every single game. Now, here you got Romo with, they lose that game. The Cowboys miss the playoffs. Now, here's Romo still with one career playoff win to his credit. And I think he only has 1 year left on his Cowboys contract. So I think it might be a little bit of a season of reflection, an off-season of reflection for Mr. Romo there in Big D.
Yeah, I know at the beginning of the year, Romo had that little starter ad where he kind of made like he was going to turn things around on how serious it was. But at the end of the day, as you and I both predicted correctly, threw a screen pass, never saw the linebacker coming, and there goes their season. It's almost the only way I can equate it is to baseball with A-Rod. It's like even though you know it's going to happen and he's going to choke or not get the hit in the clutch, you're still amazed by it all. It's just it's almost like the inverse of the big game player who shows up when his team needs a play, and he's just the complete opposite. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a make or break year for Romo. Who would have thought?
Yeah. And, you know, one thing I like is with RG3 not just winning this game, but I think the injury that he got, really, it couldn't come at a better time because now he's learning. And, you know, I liked his quarterback smarts anyways, but now he knows that whether he has his mobility or not, he's able to, you know, control the games, to manage things. He's able to win big games even when he's not at 100% mobility. And then the other thing I liked about him was after the game, he was talking about Alfred Morris, his running back, and he said, yeah, I've talked to Alfred, and, you know, I need him to be my Terrell Davis. You know, so he's already comparing himself to champions. He doesn't just want to be a sideshow or be good on his character in video games or anything. RG3, I think, he wants that ring. He may not get it this year, but I think he's got the right mindset, and I just love him as a quarterback.
Yeah, very smart at a young age, and I'm guessing Pam Oliver won't get a good interview out of him this weekend in Washington.
Okay, so, you know, and after all of the turmoil, all the heartbreak and everything, the Bears missing the playoffs, came Black Monday, of course, and all the coaching casualties. Lovie Smith is out in Chicago. Andy Reid's gone from Philly. Norv Turner, they tossed him out of San Diego, and they said, take your GM with you. Romeo Crennel gone out of Kansas City. Ken Wisenhunt tossed out of Arizona. Pat Shurmur thrown out of Cleveland. And Chan Gailey and his entire coaching staff run out of Buffalo. So that's a pretty crazy Monday there.
Nicely done. I can't believe you had them all memorized. I would have to refer to notes.
Well, actually, I do have a graphic up on the screen right now.
You're like, hey, I thought you were looking directly into the camera when you read those off. We didn't know. You pulled a Jay Leno with the teleprompter, right?
Well, you know what? One of the things that's a little bit puzzling, we think about two coaches though who didn't get the axe, and one of those is Rex Ryan of the New York Jets. The other is Jim Schwartz, whose Detroit Lions went 10-6 last year and had some playoff action, and this year 4-12 and just a complete collapse. And then Rex Ryan with everything that went on there, but somehow Jets management, they put it on the GM, Tannenbaum, and threw him out, and they're going to keep Rex there in New York. Yet Lovie Smith got tossed out of Chicago. What do you think of all that?
What I think is, I think the two are kind of interrelated. Chicago brought in a new GM. Lovie Smith was not his guy. They gave him one more year, and I mean, oddly enough, guy had a winning season but didn't get into the playoffs. And he was a casualty. GM wants to bring in his own guys. And in New York, what's odd, look, I don't want to see anyone get fired, but I've been saying for weeks on this show that Tannenbaum put that team together. What we're finding out after the fact is that Ryan either went along with these or gave these moves his blessing. So why not just completely clean house? Ultimately, even though Ryan's going to survive this year, he's a proverbial dead man walking. They're going to bring in a new GM, and it's going to be the same case as it was with Lovie Smith in Chicago this year. Unless they make it to the playoffs or make a run at the Super Bowl, the Jets are going to be in the market for a new coach. And even more interesting with that is even if they're going to have to bring a new offensive and defensive coordinator this year, how long are those guys going to stick around? Are they going to get one-year deals or what? I mean, it's just the Jets situation becomes a bigger and bigger mess by the day. So with Schwartz, similarly, guy has a contract extension. I think ultimately Lions management doesn't want to eat it and buy him out yet. They figure, well, maybe this year was an aberration. We'll give him one more try. But as bad as the Lions are, still not as big a mess as the Jets are, in my opinion.
Yeah, and well, the Lions, and even you just look at a couple of games. I'd even picked them to beat the Bears this past weekend, and obviously they couldn't do it. They just gave the game to the Bears, and it showed how bad the Bears were, though. They never moved the ball, and I think that was one problem when they talked about why Lovie Smith had been fired, and they said the inconsistency on the offensive side of the ball. And that's a team that started out 7-1 and winds up, 10-6 and missing the playoffs. So It came down to one of those things where it's either your defense gets 5 turnovers and 1 defensive score every single game, or you lose the game. So really,
Yeah.
no consistency there on offense for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, exactly. And what's ironic is the players are so fired up when Smith got fired. Where was this fire and intensity during the season? I mean, kind of baffling.
And what about, just a couple others here. What about Wisenhunt there in Arizona? Is it about him and not having a quarterback? Because really, that was the whole problem in Arizona. They did not have a quarterback. So is that something that you just put on the coach? So in other words, is that firing really fair? And that's the place Andy Reid is rumored to possibly be going as well.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I mean, you look last year, they had Kevin Kolb and John Skelton, which were by no means impressive, and they finished up strong down the stretch. I mean, this is a guy who took his team to the Super Bowl within a mere minutes of potentially beating the Steelers, and they had Kurt Warner, and that's the only time he's really had success there. I think this year, with the quarterback situation being such a mess and both those guys going down and relying on third and fourth stringers, ultimately it hurt him. But like we were kind of talking about in pre-production, imagine if the Cardinals had gotten Peyton Manning. We wouldn't be talking about any of this. They'd probably be gearing up for a playoff game this weekend or having a bye. I mean, and that NFC West with Peyton Manning, look what he did with the Broncos. I think it'd be safe to say at least they'd be a wild card team with Larry Fitzgerald and Beanie Wells and an underrated defense. But look at how
Right.
quickly fortunes can change a quarterback. So what's interesting is I think Wisenhunt's going to find a job right away. It's kind of like that Andy Reid syndrome. Probably just needed a change. Ultimately, executives in the league know he's a good coach, and if he gets in the right place, he'll be able to show that.
Yeah, and then the other one you might want to think about, who kept his job too, is Jason Garrett in Dallas. Big D after another, and we said this at the beginning when we started doing the show at week 1 about the Dallas Cowboys, was there's no team that will give you more thrills and spills through an 8-8 season than the Dallas Cowboys, and that was the same thing they did this year, but Jason Garrett is still the man there in Big D.
Absolutely, and you know what? If he does keep his job, I think Rob Ryan will be the fall guy. That defense was atrocious this year, but even still, he's got his job today, Garrett, but I'm skeptical. I remember going back a good 10 years now when Dave Campo was coaching the Cowboys, and there was a clandestine meeting in New Jersey on Jerry Jones' private jet with Bill Parcells, and before you knew it, he was the coach. So, there's always those rumblings. Is Jerry Jones going to make a run at John Gruden? He's not going to get Sean Payton now, as the Saints locked him up, but you just
Right.
never know. He likes those big names, and who knows? Does he call a Bill Cowher, who's been a broadcaster for years now? Does he make a run at someone like Nick Saban in college? You just never know. So, I'll believe Jason Garrett's coach when we come to opening day 2013 and he's on the sideline.
There you go. And also, it's rumored that I guess Chip Kelly is supposed to be talking with a few teams this week sometime. Chip Kelly, the coach of the Oregon Ducks, so he might be making the jump to pro ball as well there.
Yeah, I think he will. I've heard the Eagles, Bills, and Browns, to name a few. I know
Right.
a lot of people out of Philly seem to think he's the hot name there. But, it looks like he's going to get an NFL job, too, if he wants it.
Okay, so, just about time to go ahead and get into the picks. We'll get to spend a little bit more time on the games since we only have 4 games that we're going to be picking this week. But before we jump in there, any nuggets that you'd like to throw out?
Yeah, I actually think that all the games are going to be good this weekend. I mean, the first one, the rematch of last year's wild card game between the Texans and the Bengals, could potentially be a snoozer like it was last year. But, I think the Bengals are improved. They'll be out for revenge. And all the other matchups I don't think are going to be as one-sided as some people think. So, luckily, I think we should have a good weekend of football in front of us. So, ultimately, that's what it's all about. And the NFL just wants those eyes on the TV. So I'm sure they're hoping my prediction rings true.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into picks of the week. And regular season is over, and we were competing every week and making our picks. At the end of the year, I am 67-43. Chris, you're 66-44. Only one game separates us. Now, technically, yes, I did win the regular season, but by no means do I think I really won bragging rights there.
Yeah, I'd have to give special thanks to my beloved New York Giants. I picked with them and against them incorrectly on more than a number of occasions, and then I think the final nail in my coffin were the two Ravens-Steelers game, which I was on the wrong side both times. So you can thank your Steelers for laying down 1 week, and you can thank Charlie Batch for winning that second game, which locked it up for you. So you can send them a nice package of nothing when you get a chance.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what they got for the postseason was a package of nothing, despite their number one ranked defense. But, oh well. That's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into the picks of the week. And, that first game will start on the Saturday. The Bengals and the Texans. Bengals at 10-6, Texans at 12-4. The Bengals, though, when we look at the way the teams are playing, the Bengals are 4-1 in their last 5 games, a couple of big wins. They've won 3 straight, 7 of their last 8. The Texans, though, started the season 11-1, and now they've lost 2 straight games to end the season, including this game, which that was troubling that they lost this game this weekend against Indy. I don't care if it was in Indy. I don't care if Chuck Pagano was back. Well, I do as him as a human being, but as far as their football team, they needed that game. And they go out there in Indy and cannot take care of business, so this looks like one of those games where, I think Houston's they're a 5-point favorite or something like that. But this is a game that could get pretty interesting really quickly here.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Just a few weeks ago, everyone thought Houston would at the very least have a bye, if not lock up home field throughout the playoffs. Now they're playing on Saturday. So just really tanked down the stretch. I don't know if they peaked too soon or what. I'm with you there. That said, I think it will be a close game, but I'm going to go with Houston. I think Arian Foster, again, will be the difference. I think their defense will confuse and confound Andy Dalton, much like they did last year. I do worry about A.J. Green, as we've talked about numerous times on the show throughout the season, but I don't think Wade Phillips is going to let him beat them. And if you shut him down, not a heck of a lot of weapons on the Bengals offense that would scare me as a Texans defender. So going with Houston.
All right, and well, I think the book on how to beat Houston is pretty simple, and that is, relatively simple, and that is if you can do it. And that is if you take away Arian Foster, if you can stop Arian Foster and make Matt Schaub beat you, I think that's how you beat this team. And when I look at how they've been playing the last few games, and they haven't been showing up. You look at the touchdowns they gave up against the Colts this past weekend, just a kind of little bit of a lack of focus. I hate to put my money on the Bengals given their history, but I think this is the perfect storm here. 2 teams headed in opposite directions, and Matt Schaub and Kubiak still have never won a playoff game together. I think it's time right now, and I'm going to go ahead and take the Bengals in the upset over the Houston Texans here. It's going to be
out on a limb. I like it.
Yeah, it should be a good game, and but it could wind up the way that you say, and Cincinnati could go out and look horrible. But I think it's just time here, and you got 2 teams, like I said, heading in opposite directions. I like the way the Bengals have been playing. They're playing with a lot of confidence, and I think it's time to they're going to go out there and get the job done in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked at all if that happens, but I don't think it'll be a blowout like a lot of people are expecting. I don't think it'll be a repeat of last season's game.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Here's deja vu all over again. The Minnesota Vikings at Green Bay. Vikings, of course, just beat the Packers 37-34 in Week 17. That was in Minnesota, though. The Vikings on a 4-game winning streak. The Packers 4-1 in their last 5 games. You look at over the course of the season, plus 31-point differential for the Vikings. The Packers plus 97. I think this is, so both teams are playing as well as they can play right now. I think that in this game, I'm going to go down to the experience factor, a lot of X factors. There's still some of the Packers that played in that, the championship team from a few years ago are still there. Clay Matthews is still there. Charles Woodson is going to be back, and I love Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers knows how to win big games. The Vikings are an unknown quantity in this game, and I think this game being in Green Bay at storied Lambeau Field, that gives the edge to the Packers. And, Adrian Peterson, I think, is going to run his behind off, as he always does. But I like the Packers in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it ultimately comes down to the game being in Lambeau Field. And as great as Adrian Peterson is, I think this turns into a game between two quarterbacks that are going to have to make plays to win. And my money would always be on Aaron Rodgers over Christian Ponder. So I think it'll be a good game. Hopefully as exciting as last week, but I see the Packers eking this one out as much as I'd like to see the great Vikings story and the AP train roll on.
Okay, so we're going to agree on that one. We both got the Packers. Then we go to the Sunday games, and here's your first really intriguing matchup there, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. The Indianapolis Colts going into Baltimore. And Indianapolis actually, over the course of the season, they did put up a better record. This is also going to be Ray Lewis's last stand. Ray Lewis is going to retire. He's announced he's going to retire at the end of this season, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah, and before today I was leaning towards picking the Colts in an upset. I'm extremely impressed with Andrew Luck, the Chuck Pagano returning factor, definitely on their side. But now with Lewis retiring, I think that team is going to be more than motivated, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Again, I think it'll be a good game, but Baltimore pulls it out. Even though they kind of let one get away against the Bengals last week, I'm reminded of the way this team played against the Giants, and they kind of had a fire lit under them. And I think they win. And for those of you youngsters out there, a little bit of a history lesson. The Indianapolis Colts didn't always play in Indiana. They moved out of Baltimore in the middle of the night in 1983. A lot of people forget that. I'm sure they'll talk about it on the broadcast Sunday. But they packed up their Mayflower moving trucks and moved out. So a little bit of a grudge match there for those old folks that remember it.
Yep. So, well, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it just kind of the same way that you did as far as the Colts being able to possibly win this game. And the Colts, playing good ball at the right time, 4-1 their last 5 games. The Ravens only 1-4. And true, Lewis comes back and does spark that defense. But the Ravens' defense really has not played like they've traditionally played all season long here. And now you got the Colts, the number 7 passing offense. The Ravens only rank number 17 in pass defense. Luck likes to throw the ball. I'm going to go ahead and stick with that upset. I like the Indianapolis Colts going in and beating Baltimore. It'll be kind of a bitter ending for Ray Lewis's career, but I'm going to go with the Colts here, and youth shall be served.
Gutsy. I like it. We're differing. I like this.
Yeah, because it's it's a tough game to pick. All 4 of them could go either way here. But let's go ahead and get to what should be a big Sunday night tilt. Hopefully it's not a snooze fest like you talked about it might be. And that is the battle of the rookie QBs, Russell Wilson out of Seattle, heading to D.C. to take on RG3 and the Redskins. How do you see this game?
There's going to be a lot of talk about the Seahawks traveling east and their abysmal record historically, and how they won't do well in the time zone and so forth. The Redskins are on a roll like we haven't seen in a long time from a Redskins team. Very impressive. RG3 could easily win Rookie of the Year. Alfred Morris, one of the great unknowns that have come into the league in recent years, and Mike Shanahan's essentially made him this decade's version of Terrell Davis, coming out of the blue and making a star running back out of him in that system. That said, I just like the Seahawks defense better. I know they've gotten kind of more attention than they have in previous years. The national media's kind of picked up on it. They're tucked away there in the Pacific Northwest, but I don't think a lot of the nation's football fans realize how impressive this defense is. And they got a glimpse of it against the 49ers a couple weeks ago on Sunday night. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to be able to contain RG3 and friends and end up winning this game. Might not be as high scoring as everyone wants it to be. Might be a bit of a snoozer, as I alluded to. But I think Russell Wilson makes the plays, and watch for Marshawn Lynch to run over this Redskins defense too.
Marshawn Lynch. All right. Well, you know what? I've got London Fletcher on the line, and he begs to differ with you. And when we talk about defense, I think that's one of the things. It's going to come down to a few intangibles. Two young quarterbacks. It's about those intangibles on defense. I think with Marshawn Lynch versus Alfred Morris is a great matchup of two top running backs. But I think the little things that are going to make the difference here, I give that edge to the Redskins though, and that is because of, like I mentioned, London Fletcher, also D'Angelo Hall. He's a veteran. If he can keep his head screwed on right and doesn't go ballistic or something, he's very effective. But all that said, and the Redskins playing at home, you got to go with RG3 and the Skins, man. Come on.
Trying to be a contrarian, I went into this postseason thinking the Seahawks could be a dark horse team, and I'm going to stick with it, even though I know they've got kind of this East Coast jinx. But there's just something about them this year. I think, don't want to say they're going to be this year's version of the Giants or the Packers 2 years ago, but I've got to pick an upset, and there's my upset this week.
Okay, well, I don't know. I got to go with Redskins. I got to go with the Redskins. 7-game winning streak. But, and very quietly, like you talk about the Seahawks, they don't get a lot of ink, but they're on a 5-game win streak. They have the number 3 rushing offense versus the Redskins' number 5 rushing defense. And, their point differential is just insane because they put up over 40 points for 3 games in a row or so. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm not predicting a blowout by the Redskins, but I think just a few of the little things, the little differences, the little edges I think the Redskins have, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And even there, if you look at offense, Santana Moss, he's a wily veteran receiver. He competes hard. And I think that the Redskins have a little bit too much for the Seahawks at this point. So, yeah, I like this. I like in what's going to be an entertaining game. I do like the Washington Redskins in this one.
Well, you got to be consistent. Kudos to you. You had them as one of your dark horse teams in the NFC during our preview show this summer. So at least you're consistent. I like it.
There you go. All right. Well, we're just about out here. So, do we have any final words there, Mr. Lardieri?
Yeah, kind of more of a media topic. I was reading, and I've heard that Jim Rome's show is now no longer on the Fox Sports Radio Network. He's switched over to this new CBS Sports Radio Network. And the guy that replaced him is a stand-up comedian, Jay Moore. And I hear this, and it gives me hope, Charles, that maybe you and I someday could replace a syndicated radio host, and we could finally get our due. What do you think? If a comedian can talk sports, how about two guys who actually know sports and have written about it and covered it? What do you think about that?
Well, that's a pretty radical concept that you have there. So we'll just have to see if the world is ready for such a thing,
Maybe we could just get on one of these ESPN roundtable gong show type things where we just used to write and now we just say controversial things to get attention, like, Jeter's on steroids and Tebow's the greatest quarterback in the NFL. Maybe that'll work better.
Yeah, and RG3 is a cornball brother. How about that one?
I served that right up for you. Very well played.
Hey, you throw that alley-oop and I'll dunk it. Stockton to Malone. That's just the way it is.
That's right.
Okay, so everybody, remember, read that FN Follies column by Chris Lardieri. Always entertaining, I guarantee it. I personally guarantee it every single week on footballnation.com. Follow him on Twitter at Chris L. Sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. So for Chris Lardieri, I am Charles E. Smith Jr. This has been Football Talk. We'll see everybody next week after the first round of the playoffs is over. Thanks for joining us, and have fun this weekend. We'll see you later.